Welcome, y'all, to Digging Too Deep. I'm your host, Keith Robinson. With this being the age of Aquarius, we'll be looking for truth. And today, I have somebody that'll be looking for truth with me. And as we dig for this truth, because that's what we like to do on Digging Too Deep, we like to get to the origin for power. So we'll be looking at his story, but we'll find the truth in it. Thank y'all for tuning in to Digging Too Deep on the Marvel Knot Network. If you like the content, then please like, share, and subscribe. And you can also catch us at www.marvelknotnetwork.com. Ronnie J.
Pleasure, peace, and blessings to all those. Pleasure to be here in this, feeling all these nice vibes and the energy, and to speak truth. Because as we know, the truth will set you free, your body, your mind. It's an amazing thing as you take that journey down that road to truth.
So let me ask you this. What got you on this road?
Mine, K-Jam, was really a movie. And I can't recall a movie that come to me here in a minute, but it was a movie that did it for me a couple of years ago. I was going to the barbershop. Yeah, I don't have much hair, but I do have a beard. And I was going in there, and the owner of the shop, as we do, had these bootleg movies. And so as I'm going through the CDs or the DVDs, figuring out what movie I want to buy, he tells me, "Oh, I think you might like that one." And so the name of this movie is going to come to me here in a minute. And so I take this DVD, I go home and I watch it. What was the name of this movie? And so I pop this in, and it starts revealing stuff to me I had never heard about religion, about Black history, Black glorious history, I must say. So that was really the start of my enlightenment.
Okay. I can relate to that, because it's funny you say a movie, because the Matrix trilogy,
Right.
great movies, but it was something else about them. It was like I was seeing these parallels and these symmetries of stuff that I thought was going on. Like, with the heavens and the cosmos and the universe and the Illuminati. I mean, everything that I wondered about, it seemed like it was touching in this movie, but in a way that made me say, wait a minute, there's something to this. So I can get that, how something sparks it. So, for example, black and white checkered floors are, to make it the similarity of dimensional travel. Just that kind of stuff. Then they've got the Marian Vision in there, which is supposed to be Jesus Christ's bloodline name. And, just all these things that just started sparking all these questions, man. So I understand how something can just spark like that.
There's a lot of symbolism in our movies, in the books, in basic business logos that are all stem from the origins of those, or really our spirituality, really go back to African spirituality. There's a lot of symbolism in those movies and stuff that we don't even realize that it is a message or telling us something. So yeah, a lot of, not only are we inspired and uplifted by movies and history that we've read in spirituality, but so are other folks that put their thoughts into some of these movies and publications that we don't even know what their original symbol, the origins of that symbol are.
Right. I can think of one like the chevron, for instance. That's go. Then there's the cross of Lorraine and Exxon, the two X's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I get that. And see, and that's the stuff that's like, well, you and I have never discussed that. So for you and I to be discussing that now, see, that's, if two different people are talking about a same principle, how can it not be something to it?
Well, and you're right, K-Jam, and a lot of it really comes from, I won't say a lot of it, most of it will come from reading. We're it kind of starts there when you're growing up. We don't read enough. The stuff that we are reading aren't the stuff about our heroes or our origins or and like I said, the glorious Black history. We know nothing about that. We really think our history started with slavery,
Right.
and it really didn't. There was some glorious Black history, especially back in Africa. Before we came into slavery, I mean, Blacks were the first into civilization. They were the first to establish water systems. They were the first to establish a religion. They were the first to do a lot of these things, but we don't know those because, lack of, they certainly didn't pump that up and put that in the movies. But it's all there in plain sight, right in books.
And that's funny, plain sight. That's how he works. I mean, it's hidden in plain sight. It's right up under your nose.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and you alluded to something, man, that I have to bring up. We could talk till we're blue in the face about our revelations, about the power that's being given to us with speaking the truth. But there's still the point of people just don't want to accept the truth because of these premises of abuse, like I was saying. Sometimes when you've been abused and someone comes to rescue you from the abuser, you protect the abuser.
Right.
That type. We were talking about those kind of dynamics. So I think some of that's going on because people know they're getting tugged. There's a tug in their gut. But as soon as you say what they've been doing for generations and, for families and passing it down, no one wants to say that stuff wasn't true.
Yeah, no one wants to be wrong. I wouldn't want to be wrong. When I'm stumbling and reading the stuff that I'm reading, I was angered by it.
Right.
Angered at Caucasians, angered at Black people, angry at my parents, angry at myself.
Yes.
But you learn to move beyond that. And you're angered just because you did not know about this. Where was it? How come then somebody didn't tell me about this? Where were these leaders? How come I didn't know about John Henry Clark? How did I know about Professor Smalls? How did I know Egypt original name was Kemet? How did I know what Kemet stood for, land of the Blacks? Or how did I not know all of this before? And so you're kind of angered by that, but you will. And that's the thing about when you come into this space of consciousness, spirituality, becoming awoke, you learn to move beyond that and you learn to use that energy that you were maybe going in the wrong direction, to use that in order to further enlighten yourself. Mm-hmm. And so there's a spectrum that you go through when you're coming into this. And again, a lot of us, we don't want to be wrong. We've been studying something so long, and to come in and tell me this is not right. I got too much invested in this.
There you go.
Whether you're sitting behind the pulpit or in front of it, I got too much invested in this, in order for me to change my mind and to go in another direction from it. A lot do, but a lot don't. And I just think, again, from my opinion, we're kind of afraid of what's on the other side. And again, that I've been bamboozled for all these years, and I can't accept that. And so we just continue the path of what we know and what we feel comfortable with.
I too was angry first, went through the emotional roller coaster that you allude to. I too went through that. A perfect example of what you were talking about earlier about being subjected to certain things that were supposed to be the truth that weren't. I remember in the 7th grade, Texas history, there was a picture of George Washington in that majestic red coat with his medals and everything on, with his hands sitting there, right there, sitting on that white steed. And then there was that black man down there. And because of what I'd been taught and subjected to, I naturally thought he was a slave. But once I started finding out later, that was a Moor teaching Washington how to ride that horse, ushering in the Renaissance. See, that's the stuff that's been tainted, hidden, changed from us. Just the power that we possess that you were talking about.
It is. We've always been an influential people, when no matter where we've been, in what stage. I always say it's amazing where I think Black people, people of African descent are these days from everything we've had to overcome. And look where we still stand. We still have a long way to go. But our influence, there's no doubt about that. We're very influential people. We always have been. And the Moors were certainly that. I wish I knew more about them. There's so much we don't know about Black history. And once you start going down this, the Moors, Haru, Kemet, Egypt. I mean, there's so much to learn. And there's different facets of it. So, and the Moors were right there. They were one of the most while Caucasians were still living in slums, living in caves. Here were the Moors that came and took them out of that, out of that stage that they were in. They taught them folks how to bathe. That you don't sleep with the animals. I mean, it was the Moors that came along and really brought along this Renaissance, that the European Renaissance that they kind of know now.
Yep. So let's back up for a second.
Yeah.
Kemet. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Kemet. Hence my wear, for the theme, you know what I mean?
Right.
Shout out, you know what I'm saying? Ronnie J, I say, you understand me?
There we go.
But even on your lapel or on your chest, I see. You know what I mean? So just give me the basic. What do I have on? What am I wearing?
So that what you have on is an image of the Haru falcon, which most people know as Horus. That was the Greek name, and when I started reading, and that was one thing that really stood out to me, that a lot of stuff I know and what I really at that time knew about Egypt was really what the Greeks called it. The Greeks really named Egypt. It really wasn't called that. That's not what the people of Egypt knew what it was. They knew it by Kemet. And so a lot of the names, a lot of those were Greek. Well, those were the Greek names that they've given those people. Horus was the Greek name, but Haru was the actual name of the symbol that you see on my chest and the image that you see on yours as well. And so Haru, of course, to me, and again, a lot of the stuff you have to form becomes when you're reading becomes your interpretation.
You got to go read.
And so, you have to read. Haru was part of the first Trinity, where you have and see, now I'm going to forget who those folks were, but he was part of the first Trinity, and that's really what the story of where I would say a resurrection not came from, but really maybe took some of its origins from that story, because this was really the first story of a rebirth. And so that's really what we're seeing here. We're seeing the symbol of Haru, which was reflected by Horus when his father, was cut up and his body was thrown into the Nile River. Isis, again, was the Greek name that, as we know her by, came along, blew breath back into her husband's body. That symbolism, which out of that, they were able to birth their son Haru, and that's where the rebirth of Haru comes from. That's where that symbolism comes from. That's why he is an eagle. It's all based around that story. And if you notice, this falcon, I said eagle, but I meant falcon. This falcon, that's why a lot of countries have a symbol of some type of bird, because they had one. So a lot of influential stuff, I know it's kind of long-winded there, came from Kemet, and I'm not even sure if I answered your question.
No, you did, but because, and you actually made me think of this. Most of the things we've learned biblically are actually stories, and you correct me if I'm wrong, stories of the cosmos and of astronomy that have been twisted or interpreted into something else. For example, and you tell me again if I'm wrong, the three wise men wasn't the three wise men that were going to see this baby in this manger that an animal eats out of. It was actually stars. What was it? Orion's belt or something to that effect? The three stars. Orion, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So just things like that, to where everything that we've been taught and taught with the spin on it, is actually from something original. Like you said, the Greeks, they're coming from the same place. Even probably Confucius and Gandhi and everyone is going back to these origins,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just what I think. I'm a baby in this, so I'm just starting to try to formulate some things that were this stuff that I'm reading. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If this story is this story, so the story we've been given is from a whole story that's almost verbatim with just different names.
You're exactly right. And that's where we have to be careful, because there's a lot of truth mixed in,
right,
with a lot of stuff that isn't true. So in order to decipher what is, you have to read. We have to
seek it.
You have to seek it.
Yeah.
You gotta want to know it, first of all, but you certainly have to read. There's a lot of, of course, there's a lot of YouTubes out there, of course, with a lot of Black leaders that you could listen to. But all they're going to lead you to is more publications. So you certainly have to dive in to learn more about truth.
Man, I'm just sitting here thinking, and I know this is the natural thought. We're talking about learning, and we're talking about thinking. Thinking is one of the most less things that's done in this place, in this life. But it made me think we're also talking about unlearning. I think that's the biggest struggle that we have.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, man. I tried to be devout. I tried to be faithful. So one of my symmetries, I'm bringing it up to say, one of the things I did when I first started getting these truths, I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong, like you said. So I was looking for symmetries. And we're going to look at some of them symmetries, because we got to take a break right now. But we'll be back. Digging too deep. Welcome back, y'all. I have to say something first. You may have heard my man allude to me as K-Jam. Well, that lets you know he knows me. That's a name that if you're where I'm from, then you know that name. And it stands for knowledge joins all men. And I thought I'd just say that because that's pertinent to this moment, because I'm seeking knowledge. So with what we've been discussing thus far, it begs the question. And it's probably the reason that most people fight this whole seeking of the truth. And I'm just going to ask the question. So, Ronnie J, with your knowledge that you seek, is Jesus real?
Damn, that's a question I think people ask themselves, especially as you start to learn more and you start to read more, and you start to question that as you start to question everything. And so that's just one of the elements or truth that you are questioning, is whether was this something that actually happened or not. Now, to me, it's there was a person who lived on this earth who went around parading himself as that. I don't think he ever calls himself Jesus, but or the Son of God. But there was a person that went around kind of, acting as if he were. But I don't really think the way the Christian's story is. No, I don't. I have a lot of holes in that story. Mm-hmm. A lot of questions about it. A lot that can probably be answered, maybe. But the thing I always come back to, not only with that Messiah, and there is a book called that you can read that called the 25 Messiahs before Jesus Christ. So they're all of them were born on a certain date, a certain time of year, and so that can maybe that kind of answered and told me something right there. And you cannot find there's no grave sites for any of these people in that book. There's grave sites for the symbolism that I'm wearing on my shirt. I can find all those leaders they built all these temples for their burials, but you can't find any for the ones that were in that book. And so when you ask yourself, and if you dare to ask yourself those questions, maybe you'll come up with the same answers I did, and that is that to me the story falls short a little bit. I think it was just a story, and I think back in those times, religion was used for entertainment. They had nothing else. There was no internet. There were publications, but they needed a form of entertainment, and religion kind of fell off into that, and that's why you have so many stories that come out of the Bible and all of these other forms of religious books. That's why they have so many stories in there, because they told those stories, as part of entertainment.
With the name itself, Jesus. From the studying I've been doing, or the researching I've been doing, there was no J. So without the J, that ESUS translated to Zeus, hail Zeus. So how would it feel, or how would it be to go and tell, hey, when you're saying your prayers and you're saying in this name, you're saying you're petitioning Zeus. Yeah. So that's just the kind of stuff that you start to see, right, as you get to digging into this.
It's the stuff that you start to ask your question. Zeus was a Greek god, I believe. And the Greeks really took a lot of their inspiration from the people of Kemet in Egypt. And you got to remember, Egypt was around thousands of years. I want to say 4,000 years before it was conquered. It was around, and it went through a lot of transformations. It started out, it was originally African people. It was African kings, African queens.
Yes. The conquerors get to write the story.
And that's what happened. The longer it went on, we, by nature, are not violent people. We allowed these people, we befriended these people, the Greeks, the Asians, the people that came in. We were doing all these great things. And I say we, the people of Kemet, and others wanted to know about that. And so they came to seek that knowledge, to seek the same spirituality. They saw these statues. They saw these great monuments. These people must be doing some fabulous things. So they really took they were really influenced by the people of Kemet, and they really wanted to know about it, which is why they have gods. I mean, there were Egyptian gods, and that's why the Greeks now have all these gods, because they did.
That's thorough. That's thorough. So let me ask you another question about the pushback or the apprehension that you feel when giving this information, particularly to family.
When you come into this, like I said, I was a little angered by it, and others, and so a lot of times you want to share this newfound truth with people. It feels good. You're excited. You know something that they probably don't know. But it's a tough conversation to have with folks. It really is. I remember the first time I started to have this conversation with a family member, and giving them what I'm thinking, all this gold information. Their response back to me was, how do I know what I'm reading is the truth? And so that's the type of pushback you're going to receive. Those are the type of receptions you're going to receive, because you're going into a space that they can't even comprehend is true. And we can't even comprehend that Black people had this glorious Black people history. We can't even comprehend it. And so therefore, how can anything else after that be true? How can Jesus be Black? How can any of that stuff? How can we have all these? How can there have been Black kings and queens?
Right.
First of all, because it's not. We don't read it. We didn't grow up seeing these stories in TVs and movies and stuff like that. And so there's a reluctance to believe it. First of all, because you have nothing to back that up. You have no foundation of what you're saying. And again, we aren't people who really enjoy reading. And so it really comes from the book. And so, yeah, continue to get that pushback. And the more you want to share that communication, the more you share it, the less you want to do it because of the type of pushback you get. And so for me, like I said, you come 180 with this thing. You go through like you mentioned, a litany of emotions. But you end up coming to a place of peace. Is where you eventually end up at. And most people don't want their peace broken. So if people want to know about it, I share it. If they don't, I don't tend to push it.
Speaking of, that like you said, that broken piece, that not wanting to be right. And I don't know if I've already said anything about this, but I looked for symmetries. I looked for parallels to where I wouldn't be wrong. I believed something so hard, I don't want to be wrong about it. And I found some, like with Jesus himself. So there's this disappearing period between ages 12 to 22 with him. And from what I'm seeing, that's where he went and learned what we're speaking of. He learned the EMS, the Egyptian Mystery System. Then he left and went to Tibet to learn healing with the chakras and, the blah, 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 that the books were written on, but were omitted with all of this information. So it's just things like that make me naturally go, well, okay, now I know it was hidden, but now I want to know why.
Yeah. You really got to know the origins of religion. And one of the conversations I have with myself is that we do more research, background checks on the TV we gonna buy, on the phone we gonna purchase, on the car we gonna drive. We do more research on that than we do about the origins of religion. And so we don't take the time to know, and I kind of lost where I'm going with that, but we don't take the time to know where truth and and so I would go back to, if I could step back for a second, knowing the origins of religion. And whenever I would bring up, again, you talked about me having this conversation with folks, I would kind of start with, and you gotta kind of ease into this thing, about what went on. Ask them, do you know what went on at the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Chalcedon? To me, that was really the turning point in what I believed in and what I didn't.
So give me something brief on those. What are those?
Those were the meetings that took place that birthed the Christian religion. Right. That's where you had
what books are going to be in it, what books were going to be in it,
what were not. The name I'm missing here, there was a movie named off this name that kind of ran this, that kind of oversaw it. What is the name of this? We know it. We know this name if I were to say it. But those were the meetings that took place that put together this religion, that put together, decided what books were going to be in it, what was going to be in it, what was it going to include. Even when they did this, and it was still, people still saw that as pagan. They knew about all this pagan stuff. They knew about the Trinity. They knew about Thor, Arset, and Heru. They knew about all these statues in Egypt and Kemet. They knew about. So what is this now? Y'all come along with this religion now? We know about this, and it just kind of the resurrection stories kind of mimic each other. So what's really going on here? And so it really took the people in Constantine. That's what I'm thinking of. They recognized that the people aren't buying into this. And so they had to to now find some real origins of this religion to tie it to. And if you go and dig down deep in Ethiopia, and I know there's many people out there who know way more about this than I do, but if you go down there, that's where you'll find the real origins of quote unquote Christianity really came from. But it is certainly not what we know today. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I always ask people, do you know the story of the Chalcedon and Nicaea? And if you go back, because that stuff is on the internet, again, right there, hidden in plain sight. You go back and you can read the meeting notes from what took place at these meetings. It'll really change your mind.
And I'm sure that everything was put in place, omitted for the hiding of the truth. For it almost pushing any agenda that they had. And a lot of it was back there and there wasn't so much white and black back then. Right. It really, I mean, that race really didn't start from years kind of on from that. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Where I was going. No, we were just talking about. Well, no, we were just talking about how these things were omitted, man, and it's just because knowledge is what? Power. Well, let me back up. The application of knowledge is power, and so that's what this conversation is for. It's not to convert. It's not to change your mind. It is simply to offer a truth that we have seen.
You couldn't have said it any better. I just think if I would have just grown up just knowing, let me make my mind up a decision, but at least give me the information to make a decision. And when it's been hidden from you, swept under the rug, kept from you, and then it's unveiled by you, then you really gravitate to it, because why were they hiding it?
Put that relative term. If you're regardless of your relationship, if you find out somebody's been lying to you, it's a deal breaker. Yeah. It's a deal changer at the least. And so I as I was thinking about you when you were talking about how you were going to present this to the fam and everything, man, when I got this notch, is so crazy. The first thing I thought of was, do I bring this to my mom? Because my mom, I love that lady so much. That's the only lady that's with me whether I'm right or wrong. I'm a PK. My mother's a preacher. So now watch this. Mm-hmm. She had to go through everything just to be able to preach. So of course I'm going to be pulling for her.
Sure.
You know, even more so. And so when I just found out, man, I thought of my mama. I'm glad Jesus is real.
No doubt. No doubt, Jam, that I do believe in one thing, and that is religions do have redeeming value.
Yes.
They certainly do. They certainly have. There's a lot in there for righteousness, to do good, and that's what religions are for. But to me, they all have their agenda. That they want to push, but they do have certainly are redeeming values. And so, and one thing we must recognize, that religion is just a part, just one small piece of spirituality.
That's what I was going to say.
It is not total spirituality. I don't even know if you need it or not. To me, again, knowing the origins of things, knowing the origins of religion, period, again, was a thing to me that came about for entertainment, and it was really for people who did not believe in the Messiah, in God, who did not believe in this nature or the Creator. And to me, that's why they came up with these religion and these stories, to have people believe.
And what is religion? Religion is the celebration of spirituality, right? They're really like love and marriage. They're two different things. Yeah. So one thing that I'm glad that I did in religion is I've searched for the spiritual connection anyway. I wasn't so much into the celebration, because the celebration kind of left me empty. It's like, okay, I'm celebrating how I'm supposed to. I'm attending. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do. Yet, why is something still tugging at me?
Yeah.
What am I missing? And so once I started making the connection with my source, with the Most High, with the Creator that is in me.
Yeah.
See, once I started looking instead of outward, inward, I started looking inward, outward. Because his name was what? I am. His name wasn't he is, you are. It's so beautiful because when you say, who are you talking about? You say, I am. And so, y'all, all I want everyone to do is remember, this is not a crusade. This is not a conversion. This is not a change your mind. There's no condemnation and there's no judgment. This is simply another service that is being offered. And that service is no more, no less, no left side of, no right side of, no above or no below the truth. That is what we're offering you here. And that's all we have for this episode. I want to thank my man, Ronnie J, for making it. I want to thank you for the truth that you brought. And because it's not easy to do, but someone has to do it. And it sure is easier when you have someone to walk with to do it. So we want to thank y'all for tuning in to Diggin Too Deep.
I appreciate the time as well. Enjoyed being here. It's a great platform. We need more platforms like this to share truth and to spread the messages and uplift our communities.
And we'll leave you with that on the Marvel Knot Network. Keith, why digging too deep? Well, I'm glad you asked. Digging Too Deep is simply a service to empower. So if I can prevent someone from experiencing some pain or help someone in any given situation, that is what Digging Too Deep is for.